The oldest and strongest human emotion is fear. And the oldest and strongest type of fear is trepidation of the unknown. When we were children, our parents told us that monsters didn't exist. But we were sure that something was lurking under the bed or in the closet. Fear sees even if our eyes are closed. Welcome to the realm of the arcane. My name is Lon Strickler. Join me as I examine unexplained creatures, strange manifestations, and remarkable realities. Imagine this next hour as a voyage of discovery to strange lands, seeking not for new territory, but for new knowledge of the supernatural. Come on board as we begin this adventure together. Hey folks, good evening and welcome to another episode of Arcane Radio, where we explore the unexplained live on Beyond Explanation. I'm your host, Lon Strickler, coming to you within a cannon shot of historic Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Now, before I get started, I want to again ask you a favor. Arcane Radio and Beyond Explanation channel is made possible by you liking, subscribing, and sharing our programming. Super chat donations are essential for us to continue offering you our unique content. Your consideration is very much needed and appreciated. Also, there will be an Ask Lon Anything question and answer super chat on Wednesday, April 7th at 9 p.m. Eastern here on Beyond Explanation. Please feel free to join us. Tonight's going to be an interesting show. I want to welcome Expanded Perspective Paranormal and Supernatural podcasters Kyle Philson and Cam Hale to Arcane Radio. Now, Expanded Perspectives represents individuals inclined to form one's own opinions rather than depend upon academics or authorities, especially about ancient rituals, cultures, conspiracy theories, science, cryptozoology, social and religious issues. Our open-minded views allow us to consider all possibilities regardless of how strange or unusual. Come with us as we explore the many stories, studies, and topics through podcast interviews, books, blogs, and news magazine articles. Now, Kyle Philson is a native Texan, growing up in rural Texas in a small town outside of Dallas-Fort Worth. Kyle spent a lot of time in the woods hunting, fishing, and camping. His early interest in the paranormal was first sparked by his father and uncles. Kyle became fascinated by UFOs, Bigfoot, time slips, and paranormal universes. Kyle currently lives in Texas with his wife and 3 sons. And Cam Hale was born and raised in Texas as well and comes from a long family heritage of Texans that can be traced back to before the Lone Star State gained its independence. Growing up in a rural country town, he spent the majority of his time outdoors. His fascination with the strange and unusual started in his youth. Diving deeper into these subjects at his local library only fueled the flames that have led him to where he is today. For more information, you can visit the website at expandedperspectives.com. So, guys, thanks for joining me this evening.
Man, we're glad to be here. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, it's been a while. We haven't talked for a long time. You know, you guys advertise on my website, and you do send me
each other, but we just hadn't got to talk.
That's it. I mean, yeah, and you know, I have been on your show. Maybe 3 years or so, and you'd never been on with me, so it was time to do it, I guess. So.
Yeah, right. Good as time as any.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
So, just let me ask you first of all, how did you guys get into doing the podcast, and when did you start this?
Well, it started way back. We started the podcast in September of 2013, but our idea of doing a podcast probably was a full year ahead of that. And then we started listening to podcasts even earlier than that. So I'm an independent contractor. I work for myself. So I'm in my vehicle all day, every day, a lot of time on the road. And Cam, when he worked for the municipality here in our small town, he was often by himself for entire days too by himself. Well, you listen to the classic radio stations or the pop stations, and they play the same songs over and over and over on loops. Or if you're listening to classic rock like I like, you're familiar with all the songs. I mean, you can only listen to it so much. And sports radio, it's always just the local sports guys, bitching and complaining about the teams, like why they didn't do any good. You can only listen to that for so long before that becomes boring. So me and Kim have been lifelong friends since we were like in middle school, and we would talk to each other on the phone and stuff. And Cam actually introduced me to a podcast first. This must have been like 2010, 2009. I remember because I had an iPod Shuffle, but it was the old one, the ones that didn't even have a screen on it. It looked like a Bic lighter, only thinner. And you would have to go on iTunes. You would have to find a podcast. You would have to download it on iTunes and then put it on there. It's basically like a big flash drive, and then listen to it. And I remember he found a couple shows. I don't even remember which ones. And back then, you got to remember the quality of podcast wasn't very good. Like literally, it was like a secret if you could figure out even how to do it. But I remember we would listen to podcasts. We would listen to the same episode, and then we would call each other and like, what do you think of that? What do you think of that crazy story? And, podcasts became more and more popular over time. And then I remember it was around 2011. We were sitting around talking about an episode that we heard on whatever show it was. And we were like, well, I wish they would have done it this way. I wish they would have asked the guest this, or I wish they would have went this direction. And I remember just kind of nonchalantly, just like, you think we could do something like that? And we were like, I don't know. I don't even know how to get started. Now, this was also a time where if you went on YouTube, there wasn't a lot of videos telling people how to do it. There were no books out telling you how to podcast. So what we did is we started looking at blogs and things like that and watching people that had successful shows. And of course, at that time, they weren't very successful. Seeing what they were using, like, oh, they're using that kind of microphone. I wonder why. And I remember going to a couple guitar shops, and the people, they would be like, what are you doing with it? They had no idea. And even like parents and friends, we would have to tell them, instead of podcast, we would say it's like an internet radio show, because it wasn't familiar what that was. Nowadays, everybody knows what a podcast is. You can't watch TV for more than 10 minutes without, hearing an advertisement for a podcast. But anyways, so we began purchasing gear. And then after we had what we think that we needed, we sat down and tried it. Now, I remember just getting accepted onto iTunes was like a big achievement for us. I remember I didn't realize that. I mean, they'll pretty much approve anyone. But at the time, we felt like it was a great achievement. And we were like, well, this is probably only going to last a couple months, but let's give it a shot. And I remember setting like a goal where if we could get 300 subscribers the first year, that would be incredible. And so we started, and for whatever reason, very quickly, I mean, only like in a couple of weeks, we already had 3,000 people following us. And we started reaching out to people. So that was the one thing, is we thought it would be hard to get guests on, like authors of books and other shows. And in those days, now it might be harder now, but back in those days, most people were more than willing to come on. And so we started having guests on. People heard us that were also podcast hosts. They would invite us to come on their show, much like you're doing today. And then word of mouth, it just started growing and growing and growing. And of course, the popularity of podcast, I mean, it is what it is today. I mean, now there's millions of them. But that's how we got started. Is really, we had a lifelong interest in the paranormal, and it was something that we decided to try as a hobby, and it just took off. I mean, I still have a full-time job. It still is a hobby for me. Cam had a full-time job until just the last couple months, and now he podcasts full-time, but it's been a slow process. But I mean, I still, to this day, I get super excited about doing it. I look forward to doing it. And the best thing now, according to it, when we first started, it would have to get all the information from books and stuff like that. The best thing now is, once we have an audience, is the listeners. They email us incredible stories, much like you get on Phantoms and Monsters. So every day I wake up, all I have to do is check the inbox, and there'll be really crazy, interesting, unexplainable stories that people are having and feel like sharing. So, I mean, it's a really cool thing.
Well, actually, and I didn't realize it until earlier today. I'm at my 10th anniversary now of actually doing, radio, internet radio. And I remember the first time I did it because I was on with Beyond the Edge with Eric and Sean. And I thought, oh God, what am I going to do this? I don't want to do this. But they talked me into doing it. And it just stuck, I've been on several different shows. We've had different shows and, so it gets you the blood, I guess. I guess I'd say that's the only thing I can explain. But God, it's hard for me to believe it's been 10 years now for me. So
it goes by quick.
It goes by quick. Yeah. We are approaching, it's going to be 8 years, just a couple months. Yeah. We've been doing it. So can't believe it's been almost a decade.
Wow. Well, I tell you what, you guys, you started looking into some specific phenomena that I had heard about, but I wasn't really familiar with it until I started getting information from you and from your podcast. And this is the Glimmer Man phenomena. Now, the weird thing about it is everybody started saying it was something related to what the alien creature looked like in the Predator movies.
That's right.
Quite frankly, when I first started hearing that, I couldn't believe it. I was just, what the hell is people talking about? But man, it really started picking up, and I know you guys have had a lot of reports come in. I've had several reports come in, and in fact, we had a photograph taken back in December. One of my investigators, Ryan Fusco, was out in Comanche County, Oklahoma, doing an investigation, and he caught a photograph of one of these things. It's the damnedest thing. I'll be honest with you, it's probably the best one I've ever seen.
Yeah, I agree.
Only thing it's missing is glowing green eyes, and it would look just like the one in the movie.
Yeah, and it's weird. I mean, because he wasn't really trying to get a photograph. He told me that he was just clicking digital photos all over the place, and when he was looking at the photos, eventually he saw this thing up there. So it's weird. I mean, but we've been trying to figure out, and I've been trying to figure out, and I know you guys have, what these things really are. Are they some type of cloaking like the Predator movie? I've had people say, well, it might be a Bigfoot or a cryptid that's cloaking itself. And like Cam had told me earlier, well, that makes sense in a way, because, these things seem to disappear on people and we don't know where they go to.
In the snap of the finger, they're gone.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts overall on that?
If this is something that's related to, let's just say Bigfoot, let's just narrow it down to Bigfoot. Let's not say every cryptid or every unknown creature, that this ability is truly what it is Bigfoot. This is the explanation. Then that's going to explain everything, as far as not what it is, rather, but where they go, how they disappear so fast, how 1 minute there's nothing there, the next minute they're there. The only thing it does for me that it kind of brings in doubt that I believe that's what it is if they had that ability, I feel like, why wouldn't you travel like that all the time during the daylight? Unless it takes something out of them, or we have no idea. But I would think that if it was an easy ability to do, just like flying, a bird would fly all the time like they do. I mean, if you're not just walking, so it would be something like that. What's very odd about the stories that we've received and the things that we've looked into about this is I haven't found one where they seem to hold true with the same kind of MO. Like, you'll see some where they seem to be almost aggressively toying with the witnesses. Like they are following along and they're doing it mischievously, playing. Whereas you don't really necessarily hear that with a lot of Bigfoot stories, if any, is if there is some sort of pursuit or interaction, it's almost used to push them away, like a mama sow, like old sow bear would do to protect her cubs. But whereas with these Glimmer men, it almost has it's either a more mischievous feeling or this or action, or it's where they're just simply watching. It feels like this is, I can't say completely something completely different, but it just doesn't feel to me, this is going to sound silly. Bigfoot feels natural. Like when you talk to people that have these encounters, they feel like they're in tune with something, with nature, or it's always when you're really in nature. They talk about it all the time when they talk about face sightings and people seeing brownie or dwindies or whatnot, is when you're dealing with an earth element, let's say. It's when you get into their area, it almost feels like that. We've had stories where people are, I mean, was it one from Florida? Like they're seeing these glimmer men in areas of a large cities, a lot of stuff moving. Like we have one now that I was going over, that we've got a one that come from a law officer, saw one like in town, saw something that resembled the photo. So it doesn't make sense if it was, like I said, unless Bigfoot can do it when they want to, and now they're just coming into town to be mischievous, but that doesn't seem to be their nature. So this thing feels almost not nefarious, but just something completely different. It's not like a natural feeling, was where I was going with that.
Yeah. Right. And there's opinions all over of what it could be. Some people think it's nothing more than military, exploring with some experimental camouflaging suit, to its extraterrestrials, to it's just ghosts, to aliens, parallel dimensions, people coming back from the future to observe us, and they're able to cloak them. So, I mean, the gambit is crazy. Nobody seems to know what it is, but they have been seen not just in the woods. They've been seen in cities, large cities, and I've even received a couple where people have seen them in their house. So, like Cam was talking about, what is it? Is it fae folk? Is it like a puckwudgie, a trickster, something that's playing with people in the woods? Is it more like a spirit or a demon, a jinn, like a shadow being? Like, where does it fall in the realm of the paranormal? Or is it truly just human? And somebody's got the technology to do that. I don't know, and I don't think that it's human, but I don't know what it is. I remember we got a pretty interesting sighting. I think I sent it to you, Lon, and I think you put it on Phantoms of Monsters, but I don't remember. Of a young girl. She was a college student, and I think she was going to the University of Florida, and she lived in an apartment with a roommate, like in Tallahassee or somewhere. And they had a dog, and there was a large, heavily wooded park. I don't know the name of the park, but she would go there with her dog on walks and hikes all the time. And on this one particular day, she was out there. She noticed there was not many people around. It was a weekday during the middle of the day, like 11 a.m. or something. And her dog started acting strange, was looking up in the trees. She just assumed it was a squirrel or a bird or whatever. And that's when she caught a glimpse of the thing. And when she saw it move, she said it looked like the cloaked predator from the movie Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's what it looked like. It didn't look like the creature when it, reveals itself, but the cloaking part, like she could distinctly see the outline of whatever this was. And it gave off this shimmer or this glimmer. Like you couldn't really focus on whatever it was. And if it stood still, it would really be hard to see. But whenever it moved, you could see it. And she said the thing was hiding behind a tree, and it kind of noticed her noticing it, which is very common when it comes to stories with not just Sasquatch, but fae folk stories where people have these run-ins with fairies and stuff. And she said when she would look away, the thing, she could catch it out of the peripheral vision moving. And then when she would try to look at it, it would stop again. It would peek and peer from behind the tree. So it knew that she could see it. So this is another thing that comes up from time to time, that normally they're perfectly invisible. You can't see them, but somehow their suit or whatever their technology is kind of malfunctioning. And that's why you're able to see the outline. And it kind of freaks them out that you can see them, because it's like, oh, you're not supposed to see me, but clearly you're watching me. And then
a thought I have had, and when this first started coming out, I was thinking maybe that this was kind of a close or crossover of dimensions or something thinning out to where you could see the other side to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of out there, but
The whole phenomenon's out there. So, I mean, to dismiss one person's theory is ridiculous. We don't know what it is.
True.
And it seems like, I'm not saying the sightings are increasing, but people reporting their sightings is definitely increasing. So from the time we got the first email, it was like a one-off. Like we got that one strange sighting 2 years later before we got the next one. And then when we got the second one, of course, every time we would read it on the air, then we would get like another one. And now I would say every year I probably get 7 to 10. So it seems like people are coming forward. They feel more comfortable because of the popularity of podcasts. They hear people sharing their stories. They feel okay with it. Or they probably saw something. I mean, I've had people email me that they saw it. They kind of forgot about it till they heard it. And then they were like, yeah, that's what I saw. Like I hear
that a lot. People say, well, I saw a story you had on the blog and that's something that had me. I hear that all the time. So,
right. So I had a young person email me an encounter and I was asking them, questions like The Predator, the movie. And because they were young, they weren't even familiar with the movie. They never saw the movie. It was before their time. That movie came out in the 80s. And I was like trying to explain to them. So then they went back and watched it and they're like, that was exactly what I saw. Yeah. So how many more people are out there that have had a sighting like that and just are unaware of it, so they never come forward? I think it happens more often than you think.
Or this is the explanation to when people claim they're doing things and they feel they're being watched, but they can't see anything. It could be this.
Well, we got a treat here because you sent 2 audio files of, I guess they were phone calls that you received of sightings. Is that what it was, or were they on the air with you?
Okay, well, so these recordings here that I gathered up today before the interview were actually sent to me by our friend Derek Hayes. That somebody had called into theirs, but I get them all the time, but these I had ready, prepared, edited, so I just forwarded them to you. But yeah, these were people that had these experiences, called in and left the voicemail.
Well, we're going to bring them up here. So Bill, if you want to put them up, we can listen to them.
Daniel Velasquez. I live in Federal Way, Washington, and I wanted to call and report an experience that I had last August, 2018. And from what I've been reading and hearing on other podcasts, it can be compared to what's been called the glimmering man, because that's exactly what I have experienced. I work in construction and landscaping, and what happened was one day we were working in Seattle, and we were just getting off of the Interstate 5, which, if you're not familiar with, Interstate 5 is the main vein between Canada all the way down to Mexico. And we were near Seattle, getting off of the exit in our vehicle. It wasn't the city proper. We were probably 5 miles. We were still in the Seattle itself, but was not into the downtown district. But we were still technically in Seattle. So what happened was, as we were getting off of the freeway, I was sitting in the passenger seat of a vehicle that also had my boss who was driving the vehicle, and we had another gentleman sitting in the back seat. And I was just kind of leaning back. This was like I said, it was in August. It was a really hot day out. I would say it would probably be around between 12 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was a nice warm day, nice and sunny. And as we were pulling off of the exit, I was just leaning back in the chair, had the window down, getting some fresh air, and that's when I saw this figure. It was like I've been hearing. It's been like exactly what it was, is like a pixelated figure of a person walking. It was exactly like if you've seen the old the Terminator shows, the movies. It was exactly like that, 100% like that. Not as the alien form, but when he turns invisible, when he has like this cloak on him, where you can see it's hard to explain except for saying it's exactly like what you see on the movie. And I seen this form walking to its right, and as we were getting up the freeway, and I seen this pixelated figure of a human walking, I leaned up and I said, "Oh my God, did you look at that? Look at that!" I told my boss, and I probably was watching it for about 5 seconds before my eyes really registered on what I was seeing. I sprung up out of my seat as we were getting off the freeway. I said, "Oh my God, look at that." And my boss was looking over. He's like, "Well, like what?" And as I looked at my boss to try to grab his attention to point him where I was looking, when I looked back, I had lost the figure. I can't say if it disappeared or if I just lost how it had moved, but it was a very short sighting. I would say less than 5 seconds. But those 5 seconds were the absolute strangest thing that I've ever experienced. I'm 40 years old. I've never experienced any paranormal phenomena. No ghosts, no aliens. I've never experienced anything, and I'm not even sure if this was a paranormal sighting. But whatever it was extremely strange. It was very odd to me. And this figure, it was normal shape and size of a human. Like I said, it was just walking. And behind the figure, probably I would say 20 yards, 30 yards, there was probably 3 or 4 homeless people going about their business in the road. And, they were completely oblivious from what I could tell.
I go over to the left and I go down this trail, and it's a walking path that's cemented. And it goes in to the left and the right and comes into this pier kind of. It's not a pier, but it's just an area that's covered that's like 20 feet long. To the left, there's at waist height, there's like a display board that runs the length and to the end, and then it runs over in front of you directly, and then it comes back kind of like in a J shape, and it has writing and stuff on it. It's kind of explaining what is going on there. And as you're coming into this area, there's this structure on your left side is built into kind of like a rock wall that's maybe 3-4 feet tall right there. That's exposed over. You can see kind of over it for just a few feet. There's like a little landscape area right there, and then some as you're walking into your left to this structure. So I walked into the structure, and I immediately just kind of walked into the back of it. I looked out, and at the end of it, and I looked out into the direction where you would have been looking if you were at the car in the parking lot, looking straight out, and it looked plain, but it looked different, and I can't even begin to explain what it looked like because my brain didn't accept what I saw. I can't even explain it better. That I didn't see what I saw, but I saw something and was like, what the hell? And I looked down at the display board in front of me, and it didn't make any sense for what I was looking at. So I was like, okay. I turned to my left, and I was walking back to the beginning of this display board, which was also back kind of at the beginning of where this structure had started. And I got to that spot, so I'm right at kind of the beginning of this wood structure. And to the left of me is just this little landscape area and that rock wall. That's the natural rock wall that's in this for this landscape area right there. And you could, if I wanted to, I could have climbed over that rock wall, kind of went over the structure and ran out to where, down out into the area that I was looking at. But this wasn't my intention. It's right there, And behind, just a little farther back, that's woods, so you can't really, it's all green with the trees and whatnot, so you can't do anything. You just have to go back out that path, back out to the parking lot. So just this landscape, me standing there, and while I'm standing there, somebody comes over that rock wall, and it looks just like a person, like me, and they look like they're wearing like blue or green Columbia reindeer kind of wear, you know what I mean? And like the hood's on or something's up, because I can make out the outline. Now this is in my peripheral. So I'm seeing this very quickly. Somebody takes like 2 steps, they squat down just like I would on top of like a structure or a drop, anywhere you're kind of coming to the edge of like a loading dock and you're going to jump off, but you don't want to completely just jump off. So you kind of squat down, put a hand down, and then just kind of leap down, you know? This person did that. And as they were doing this, it scared me. Like they completely caught me off guard. So I was like, oh my God, you scared me. And as I was saying that, I was looking toward them and I stopped. I didn't get it all the way out because like fear of what I was looking at or seeing just completely, I mean, when you get goosebumps or goose pimples and all your hair stands up, that happened times 10. Like just immediately it felt like my skin all over my body. It was like an inch off my body because what I saw, I could see through. This person wasn't like a defined person like you would see a person. I could see through them, kind of like the Predator or something in the movie, except it wasn't, the middle part of the person wasn't like shaped kind of like, you know, like a 3D image you were looking for. It was just kind of distorted and blurry, and it wasn't right, you know. And the person, when they moved, had an outline that was kind of like when you see like one of those NASA feeds, and it's of the Earth or whatever, and it's got the sun or whatever, some type of light hitting the atmosphere, and it's got that just light, thin yellow line that kind of glows above the atmosphere. This thing had that. It was like that same type of yellow neon just kind of glowing around the very outside of it when it moved. And when it stopped moving, like, so this thing, this guy dropped, I mean, it was a guy, for all of my life experience, this was a person, not a Bigfoot, not anything crazy. This guy was my build, a little taller. I mean, I'm 5'5". This guy was about 5'8", 5'9", and kind of just military build, if that makes sense. And the attire, when I think back, was very much just military kind of outline attire. That the kind of how do you explain it? Like a raincoat or something. The outline is not straight. It's not a straight line for your arm or whatever, because there's like wrinkles in the fabric or whatever. So anyway, this guy squatted down, he dropped down, and I turned and said, oh my God, I'm sorry, you scared me, you know what I mean? And I stopped. I didn't get, you scared me all the way out, because the person, when they dropped down, they took like a step forward, and they turned like facing me and put their arms at their side, and they just stopped moving. And when they stopped moving, and like the slower they went to when they stopped, that outline just kind of, it got harder to see, and the distortion between them kind of cleared, like in between the lines, like where his body was, kind of cleared up, and he just disappeared. Like he was gone. When he stopped moving, I couldn't see anything. And oh my God, I freaked out. I didn't jump or scream right now. My heart beat insanely in my chest. And my dog, I looked back up this, you know, to the end of the structure where I looked out originally, and to see my dog or say something to my dog, like, oh, what's going on? And the dog had ran like away. He wasn't there. I looked back. He was back up the cement trail, the path that led out of there, with his tail between his legs and his ear down, hauling. And I had to follow him, and I had to step by this guy. Now, this landscape was right next to the trail, and this is an enclosed area, so to walk down the path to go back out of here, you had to walk right by this person that was standing there, and this person was close enough that if they wanted to, they could have put their arm out, like leaned out and just grabbed me. So it scared me tremendously. And I ended up yelling, Bolt, what's wrong? And I like kind of took a step or two and then just broke into a dead sprint after the dog. I got out of that area back into the parking lot area. I didn't even look back.
There you go, folks. That second account, what's interesting to me about it, that's probably, after all the ones I've heard about and actually read, that's probably the closest personal encounter one of these things I've ever heard of. I don't know, but you guys think the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. And see, that's the thing with each sighting is some people feel like it's a person. Other people, they're like, it definitely was not a person. I don't know what it was, but I don't know what it was. But I will say in both of those accounts, they're very similar in the fact that when it's moving, you can see it. But if it stops moving, he said it in both instances, the first guy couldn't find it again. The other guy said when he got still, it kind of got clearer. Like
the outline went away.
So maybe there are, more of these things moving around in the daytime. You're just not seeing them because they're able to blend in perfectly. Now, what it is, I have no idea. Is it extraterrestrial, ultra dimensional? Is it in fact Sasquatch? Is it something else?
What I enjoy the most about those two stories are where they take place. The first one, the fella's talking about the homeless people
in the city.
He's there in the city when this thing. The other one seems like it is almost like it's at a park.
The second one took place
sort of area.
The second one took place in Idaho, and the first one was in Seattle. I edited, the long version out for the show. But
so two different settings, and they're seeing, like you talked about, you don't get a whole lot of reports of people seeing these things as they phase in or as they phase out. Like in the second encounter, he's talking about, it looks like a guy climbed over wearing all this, but he never goes into detail of this is what he had on. It's just kind of like an assumption. So was it shadows? If you see something out of the corner of your eye, do you assume they're wearing a jacket and you turn and look? They don't have a jacket on. It's just the way the shadow kind of was as they come around. Little things like that. Was it something, the way this light bending equipment that they have works? I don't know, but it's the two separate encounters.
Yeah,
right there. The two separate encounters in two different areas. I think there's more of it out there, and I think there's quite a few more people have had experiences than has ever, of course, come forward. And I just feel like there might be more of these out there than we even realize.
Yeah. I distinctly remember getting an email from more than one person that were hunters that had they observed something moving through the trees while hunting.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing.
Yeah. And these are people that are lifelong outdoorsmen. These are people that they would know what it was moving through the trees or the bushes, and it's something that they can't explain. And even they know it's kind of crazy when they're telling you, like, look, I know this sounds crazy, but I know what I saw for a few seconds, and it was something I couldn't describe. And it's been men, women, like I mentioned, the one girl down there, University of Florida. It's all types. If you've seen the Missing Hunters documentary that David Paulides put out a couple years ago, I don't know if you ever saw that, but at the end, there is a sighting by a woman that's bow hunting. I think she's in Ohio or somewhere. And she was in her tree stand, bow hunting, and she saw it moving through the trees and peering at her. Same kind of description. It looks the same height as a normal man or woman, 5'8", 6'3", somewhere in that range. You can see the outline, but something's going on where it's shimmering, glimmering. People can't focus on it. And I don't know what it is.
And the terror you have to feel running back down that pathway, chasing your dog, knowing you're fixing to pass within inches, if not right into it. Like it's there waiting. No, man, that's rough to shake loose right there.
Well, the folks in the chat room were bringing up something we had talked about earlier before the show started, was that, this Predator movie, the person who did the actual effects of this cloaking must have had some type of encounter or herd encounter at some point, because it almost matches up exactly with what people are seeing.
Yeah. And I wished I could find it again.
Talked about it before,
and it's going to drive me bananas till I can find it. But there is a tie like that, like the fellas, and I've talked about it on the show, and I'm horrible at this, but there is a tie that would make it seem exactly what you're saying. Like the boy, as a child, may have heard something like this, or may have been privy to conversations his mother and father had, or whoever they work with, and he may have heard some things around the table one evening when he was supposed to be in bed or whatnot, and this spurred these things on. I'd like to find, if I can find who it is, if I can remember, I would like to talk to him and ask him. But then even then, would they ever, could they come forward and go, oh yeah, by the way, I had heard this was a thing too. I don't know.
I'm gonna look into that, because I know some people that work in film, and I'm gonna find out if they've ever heard anything, because this you hear you see things in movies, and very rarely anything comes close in reality to what they see in the movies. But this, for some reason, has really showed up. So I don't know. Go ahead.
It's unnerving. It's a very unnerving thing. I think for everyone, this is the one deal that whenever you kind of take it from everybody, when you get to talk to somebody or an interaction with someone that's had one of these experiences with like a Glimmer man, the most unnerving part of it.
There it is.
There you go. Right there. That's it.
So yeah, it makes you wonder, right?
Yep. J. Allen Hynek's son.
Yeah,
there you
go.
That's
a guy. Yeah, that's a guy you mentioned before.
It's one of those things that it seems to make people even more uncomfortable because of its ability to vanish. Like literally, I think there's a new movie. I say new, it's probably been out a year or two. The Invisible Man, when they redid it and all that, and you can see the way it drives the main character. She goes crazy the way this Invisible Man's messing with her. You'd have to assume that if they wanted to be nefarious, of course they could, but just the extra added pressure. Because for me, Kyle and I always make this joke on the show, is like, you'll never catch me hunting ghosts, but you can catch me going to look for Bigfoot. And the reason being is very simple. I can't tell if a ghost is in my back seat when I get ready to go home, but I can damn sure tell that there's no Bigfoot back there. Right. So when you think about it being invisible, well, now imagine that. So now the thing just hopped in the back of the truck and it's just riding along drinking your coldies, and it's just waiting for you to get home.
And I think about it all the time.
You shouldn't.
Like, is it something trying to observe us? Like in what's the movie Signs, where they're probing? Yeah. Like maybe it's something just trying to observe our behavior.
These are the underwater aliens we've talked about coming up to keep an eye on us.
Right. To, make a plan. Or I also daydream, like, man, if time travel was available, wouldn't it be really cool if I could go back to like ancient Egypt, but I could be like in a cloaked outfit so they wouldn't see me observing them. But I just kind of like to peer around and see what's going on and be like, oh man, the movies were way off. That's not what it looked like.
Maybe these are the people that are on one of those go back to the past tours from the future, and they're not listening, and they're going like behind the velvet rope, or they climbed over the wall. They were told not to go there. They climbed over the wall, and that's how they got here now.
Maybe.
Well, another subject I wanted to throw at you guys were these pale crawler humanoids, or whatever the hell these things are. People call them rakes, flesh gates, crawlers. They've got all kinds of names for them. Even skinwalkers. Some people even call them wendigos. I don't think it's that. But for whatever reason, I'm sure they've been around. But man, are we getting reports over the past 2 or 3 years of these things? It's crazy. What are your thoughts on these things?
I don't. It's funny because I get a kick out of the fact that how terrified people are, and I'm one of them, of us like some sort of emaciated, pale, pasty thing. Anything that's fast or slow, we're not really afraid of it. But if it can move the same speed we move, we don't want no part of that thing. And with a humanoid figure, it feels like this is a very low level of like worker drones. I think of them this way: when there's certain levels of these things, it's like you can send out worker ants and they go out and collect things and bring it back to the whole deal. It's like these things are just collecting fear. They're collecting sorrow. They're collecting darkness. That these are the things that go out and harvest. Like they're more of a harvester. And it's almost like they're punished because of it. That's the reason they look the way they look. The whole idea of the rake, or like you even talked about the Wendigo, the skinwalker, for me, I don't feel like those are the same things. I always feel like there's something separate, or maybe it's just because I want them to be separate. That's probably what it is.
Right.
But with these crawlers, I remember reading the story of the Fresno crawlers, and then I remember seeing the stories of the rakes, and then you get into all of these where you start finding them. And like you said, probably over literally the last 24 to 28 months, it seems like the crawler rake sighting has just amped up to 11. Like people are, and maybe it's also because of the time now. Last year, there's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of bad will. There's a lot of disturbance in our universe. And maybe that's what these things feed on. And that's why they're showing up now.
I've been getting a lot of sightings. Most of the sightings have been around people's homes. And
I do not want any part of that.
Well, the thing is, I people are being home now, because of the lockdown stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe they're keeping an eye out around them and they're seeing it. But yeah, I'm getting a lot of them where they're around people's residences. So
looking through the windows. Can you imagine staring out I don't even want to get into. Yeah, that sounds terrible.
Yeah. Well, I had one not long ago where these two people were out in a shed. Their shed. It was, I guess their father had an office out there or something, and they heard something banging on the wall on the door of this shed. They looked, and it had security, so they looked up the screen for the camera, and this thing's standing outside. They'd
have been gunplay at my house.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah. What now? My in the chat, Vincent talks about something I've been reporting for several years now is the Penelope humanoid that has been seen. Oh my God, up in the Sierra Nevadas now for years. I even talked to several park rangers about this, and they confirm people are seeing this thing. Now, how this Penelope name got stuck onto this thing, I don't know what it is, but he verified that. One of the guys verified that as well, that's what they refer to it now as Penelope. But I've had 4 sightings of this crawler pale humanoid from different sources where people are out camping, especially in this area of the Sierra Nevadas. And I have no idea what it is. So
I'm running through my head of what I could possibly mistake. Any animal that you could possibly mistaken for something like that would have to have such a severe case of mange, and they would probably almost have to 100% be albino in order for you to have, which is 2 things that would line up that would be near impossible to have line up in order for it to even give you, because you got to think about, let's say a completely hairless mule deer, right? Well, then they're going to be, they're pinkish color. They're going to be different under their hair. You take a black bear. Well, their skin is real dark. And I mean, it wouldn't be light colored enough. A whitetail elk. I mean, any of these things that might be out there would be hard. It would have to be a fully albino pigmented, no melanin at all in its skin, and be completely hairless in order for you to even make that mistake. So the odds of it being something that we know is probably slim and none. So this Penelope thing, what was it? Penelope? Is it Snidely Whiplash? What, like one of the Canadian Mountie cartoons way back in the day when we were like real little?
Yeah.
Was Penelope involved in that?
Yeah. I don't know how they got that name, but one thing I did think about earlier on when I started getting these sighting reports was the body of these things, even though the other, what I'm referring to, was darker, the body of these things look very much like what these winged humanoids look like out in the Chicago area. Now, those were dark in color, but we have had some of these humanoids that have been dark in color too. So is there a connection, or is this something that's moving in and out of reality, which I think this winged humanoid phenomenon really is? I think it's something unknown that's coming in from another reality. And of course, we have been getting the reports out at O'Hara International that seem to suggest that maybe these things are connected extraterrestrial sightings and such as well. So I don't know. The whole thing is weird to me. I just we've been looking into this thing now since 2011, and then when it started in 2017 again, we've been looking at all kinds of explanations, and we still haven't really come up with anything. But quite frankly, the other coming from a alternate reality, in my estimation, is probably the closest to what this thing is. I mean, just from what people have described it, people have seen this thing literally disappear in front of them.
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
I agree.
something
I think
going
it does. I think that it feels fitting that that's where it would come from. I
Yeah.
100% agree. It just doesn't feel, like I said, it just doesn't feel like there's a natural element to
Mhm.
these things at all. And again, going back into the talking about the flying humanoids, these things could easily be gathering up stuff for it. They could be worker bees for the flying humanoids. They're just the ground dwellers, the way they do it. Because there's stories of where the people who think they have seen these crawlers in cave systems,
yeah,
around cave systems, in which would make sense if you kind of give what they look like and all these things. But it would also make sense if this was something that maybe there is like a portal, maybe there is something that's down in these systems, which is again where it allows them to pass back and forth freely. And that's whenever they come out too with the flying humanoid stuff, because it does almost seem, or maybe these crawlers are nothing more than other flying humanoids. They just have to go through a metamorphosis. They start out like insects, they're on the ground, then they got to metamorphosize into the humanoids. We don't know. I think we're doing all we can though. Collect stories, collect data, try to sort it out into, if you can, if there's ways, and catalog. That's the only thing we can do at this point is catalog, because
Mhm.
we don't have the senses, the ability, or the equipment to capture and to know where these sightings are going to take place beforehand.
I think a lot of people, when they write in, they'll describe it as looking like Gollum from
Yep.
Lord of the Rings and stuff like
Mhm.
that. They don't really know what to classify it. They don't really know what they've seen. I remember distinctly a guy in law enforcement from the town of Laredo saw what he described now as being a rake, but at the time of the sighting, of course, he had no idea what it was that he saw. But he saw something bizarre in the city underneath like an overpass. When
I'm going to tell you guys something.
Sure.
Laredo is a strange town.
That's
'Cause
what
I've
A lot
had
of
some-
history in that town.
I had some of the damnedest sightings. I've had winged humanoids. I've had pale humanoids, crawlers. I've had flying manta rays in Laredo, and a whole load of other stuff. I mean, what is it about Laredo? You guys, what is it about Laredo?
I don't go there because of all the sightings.
Just the history. I think it's just one of those places, kind of like New Orleans. It's just one of those places that has an energy about it. And
Yeah.
maybe, who knows? I mean, there's so many of the stories you get off into ley lines and energy spots, and you start getting into off to where there could be thinner areas, possibly. Sedona, Arizona is known for thinner areas, seeing dinosaurs in the desert, things like
Right.
that. Maybe that's along those lines of where this stuff kind of leaks its way out.
Well, I tell you, the area south of San Antonio down to the border is probably the most active and most diverse region for cryptid activity. I mean, I've had tiny dinosaurs seen, all kinds of crazy stuff.
Oh yeah, we've had small puckwudgies, the tiny
Yeah,
Native Americans, thunderbirds.
Yeah.
We've had so many things sent to us from that part because it's relatively unpopulated. Like there are
Yeah.
sparse areas, but there are massive. We were talking about this a lot, and it's always been the joke. And when people move to Texas, they think about Texas about it being big, but people around here don't really get excited over any purchase of land, and unless if it's a cow spot, you're talking about buying a ranch, it needs to be 10,000 acres or more. But you're talking 5,000 acres. Anything under 5,000 acres is kind of just like somebody would have. And it's different in certain areas, but I was just earlier this year out in a ranch in West Texas, out in the Davis Mountains, that was over 10,000 acres. And I mean, there's nothing out there but literally Davis Mountains, and you could understand rough and rugged country, but it's so sparse. Like you could get up there and look, and at night you can get up on top of those little flat parts on the top of those mountains and look, and you may not see houses in certain directions for the longest time. It's just empty, scary desert is
Yep,
all
there-
it is.
That's another area. I mean, anywhere from the New Mexico line over into the Davis Mountains. I had a report not long ago of a woman who contacted me about these small Bigfoot-like creatures as they were up there fossil hunting in the Davis Mountains, near Davis Mountains. I don't know if you guys read it or not, but
I think we
yeah,
talked about
I think we did.
Hobbs, New Mexico, another place. What is it about Hobbs, New Mexico? I get Bigfoot sightings, humanoid sighting, everything from that place. You know, it just seems like certain places have just weird stuff happens. You know, it's not like one person's calling them all in. I mean, I'm getting them from everywhere.
And also Carlsbad's not far from any of that. So a giant cave system. So, and we don't know, you know, who knows what all these others. I mean, there was caves on the ranch I was on. They weren't deep dwelling, but there are cave systems up in there. They may only be, 30, 40 foot deep to 100 foot deep. But there are systems out there like that. Well, then how many areas through that entire place have we never seen that's like that? So I don't know why we always think, and I say we is just an overall term, that it has to be heavily wooded, massive mountains, lots of forest in order for things to hide.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever we don't take into consideration rocky valleys and cave systems. So you kind of forget that because we don't have a lot of that around here. So that could entail with some of it that's out there.
Mm. Yeah, it's bizarre. I mean, I got to go back and dig all the crazy stuff I've gotten in Texas and put it together. Just for the hell of it, because
you're gonna be at it a while.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know, because that seems to be this. You've got states with a lot of activity, particular activity, but Texas by far is probably one of the top three.
If you were to divide it up, it may not be so bad, but because Texas is so big, we have such an array of areas.
Yeah.
Because we've done stories about the Texas coast and how haunted it is all along that Padre Island National Shoreline. There's all kinds of unnerving stories come from that stretch down through that whole area. And then we start talking about going into the Sam Houston National Forest. You get over into the piney woods. You got all of it's just never ending.
I get a lot of sightings from like Ohio and Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Of strange stuff.
I'm just kind of used to that.
I think about every 200 foot, something strange happens in Ohio. That's got to be the way it is. I've been there. The state's not that big, but as many crazy things as happens in that place, I think y'all need to move out. Just give it back to them. Find another spot.
Well, the thing about Pennsylvania and Ohio, and a lot of people don't realize, is there's a lot of wilderness area in those states.
Yeah, very much.
Pennsylvania has a lot of wilderness, a lot of game areas, a lot of forest and, state forests, national forest. Same way in Ohio. You get down into southeast Ohio, I mean, you're like living in the middle of West Virginia somewhere. I mean, it's really thick in there. Some strange stuff, a lot of weird stuff in there too. So yeah, we're lucky enough here in PA to get a good variety of strange sightings, So
a wholesome abundance of strangeness is always good, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, something always going to turn up around here. The big thing here more recently has been the UFO activity, and it's been heavy. I don't know why it has been going on the way it has the last year and a half, but especially triangle craft, and a huge triangle craft. I mean, big as football field size. It's
it seems like UFO activity has been ramping up worldwide.
It seems like everything,
even
has been picking up.
Major news sources are releasing it, and it doesn't seem like people are even affected by it.
Yeah, that's another thing. When are some of the mainstream media going to start opening up here in the United States with UFO activity and stuff as compared to, well, just like England, but England's a tabloid. news country. But you would think and it may actually start opening up more. This whole so-called disclosure by the government thing, with the Tic Tac UFOs, and that I think we're just being, like I said it before many times, we're being spoon-fed. Now, why that is, I don't know why. But if it comes to alien or other some type of life form, they're not going to see a damn thing until they have to.
Yeah.
I mean, when the thing lands in the middle of the rose garden, they're going to say something. Yeah. But until then, I don't think we're going to get much out of them about that.
I think we've been so desensitized to the whole idea of aliens that it's never going to be big news again until it does exactly what you said. Until it slaps us in the face, that it doesn't matter what human beings are bad that way. We know there's forest fires. We know there's floods. We know there's all this, yet we still choose to just live in those areas. We're like, yep, we're going for it, And I think that's the way it is with this whole alien thing, is I don't think anybody cares until it's outside their door. I think we've been beat over the head with it so much that it's kind of, which may actually have been the plan all along,
right?
Is to just force it on them till you're burned out and you don't care anymore. And anytime the letters UFO come up, you just shut off. And it's so much easier, because that's what we've talked about on the show. Is I said, how come it is not more news? And it drives us nuts that aliens are living in our ocean and nobody says anything about it. That's not in the news every day. There's not people out there watching it. There's not things going on. We're doing documentaries on all this stuff, and nobody cares that they can't answer what's flying around out there. I'm like, And I just think it's because we're just totally desensitized. I think that's the reason, like with the Glimmer Man sightings and all of these other sightings, the Mothman and all these flying humanoid sightings, is it's new. Right. It's other things happening, which that leads me down a whole nother path of.
Yeah. Well, ever since this COVID thing and, it's having a pandemic, I think people are realizing more and more now that, things can happen,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We're way more sensitive.
We're way more vulnerable than we realize.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think more people are starting to realize, we've been pretty lucky here in the United States for a long, long time. But, in 2020, we had, COVID. Then in the first month of 2021, we had an attack on the Capitol and all that other stuff we never even thought would ever even happen.
Would never
for
cross
any
your mind
reason.
30 years ago.
Yeah, no.
But it's right. Who knows? But
it's wild.
I get freaked out by all the near Earth objects that they're constantly spotting, because all it takes is one of those to hit. And I mean, everything we have is digital. It's kaput. I mean,
we rewind 5,000
Stone
years.
Ages instantly.
It ain't going to take much. It really isn't.
After seeing what happened during COVID, where like all the grocery stores were barren, and how quickly that happens.
Yeah. Well, that's why I hope this infrastructure thing finally gets passed and they're putting some money into it. Everything, I mean, we need a lot of upgrade for a lot of different things. Hell, you guys know really that for a fact.
That's why we missed it. Yeah, we missed the first one with you because we were frozen.
Yeah,
no power.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to say. That's right. I mean, who would have thought Texas was shut down because of a snowstorm?
Right?
It's embarrassing. I was snow skiing with my family in Colorado, and it was colder in Weatherford, Texas than it was where we were in the mountain skiing.
It was bad. I
was like, what in the world's going on?
Yeah,
I had gone up there the week before the winter thing hit. And on the day I'm coming home, I pass him and his family going up there. So they were telling me how awesome it had been at home, and it had been nice up there in Colorado. It had been sunny and there'd been no snow. And I get home, and 2 days later, that thing hits. And I'm calling him. I'm like, dude, this is not awesome down here, man. I'm like, this is bad. I get up one morning, it's 15 below zero, with the wind chill, but it was 0. And I'm like, that's never happened at my house ever. Yeah. And then Texas just went, well, we can't handle that, and turned the power off.
Yeah, it was pretty unbelievable. Well, guys, I tell you, I really appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thanks for having us,
man.
We're gonna have to get together more often.
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
Of course.
Yeah, for sure.
So you've got an open invitation to come on anytime. I mean, there's plenty for us to talk about, quite frankly.
True.
So tell everybody about the podcast again, how to get on there, and when they can listen to it.
Sure. You can follow us on pretty much every platform where podcasts are released. The name of the podcast, of course, is Expanded Perspectives. You can go to the website, expandedperspectives.com. If you have any cool stories you want to share with us, and perhaps you might hear it read on the air, you can email the show, expandedperspectives@yahoo.com. We have a hotline. You can call the number and leave your story if you don't feel like emailing it out. That number is 888-393-2783 or 888-393-BRUD. Yes, that's right. I remember the number.
Wow.
I always forget the phone number. And you can follow us on social media. And of course, you can follow us on YouTube. We have the regular show that comes out, just Expanded Perspectives. And we also have an elite episode, which that's for members only. You have to sign up. It's like $5 a month. And you'll get extra content every month, including our whole back catalog, which right now is like 235 episodes. Each one of those is about an hour long. That you can get all access to all that for $5. We also do additional shows that are only on YouTube for now, but they will be coming over to the podcast soon, like Cameron's Cryptid Classroom. We're about to relaunch a new show called Unusual Encounters, which we kind of did one episode like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
We're going to be picking that back up. And then we were about to start Expanded Perspectives Classic Rewind. So
thanks, Kenny.
Right. That's where you can find us, man.
Yep, that's it.
Well, great. You know, you can, like I said again, anytime you guys want to come on, you think of something you want to talk about, you just let me know. We'll arrange it.
You're like, you busy tonight?
Yeah, and same goes for you. I mean, we haven't had you on in years. Maybe we need to schedule a time to have you back on.
You gotta come on and tell the crawlers.
Just let me know.
For the crawlers.
And you know, we like when I get an interesting story sent to me that's like the Glimmer Man or something. I know. I mean, I try to forward those directly to you. I know you do the same to us, and we collaborate with a lot of other podcasts that do the same thing because they might get a sighting of a Glimmer. So I've talked to several other podcasters. When you get a sighting, send it over to me, and we do the same to them. I mean, we like big podcasting YouTube family. We don't look at people as like competitors or competition. I think there's room for all of us, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You know, usually when you get two podcasts together and do a show, it turns out to be a pretty good show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, you know, we all hear a lot of different things. And so, okay, guys. Well, thanks again. And we'll be talking soon. You take care.
All right. Thanks, Lon.
Thanks,
Be
Lon.
careful.
Bye. Now, if you have an unexplained encounter or sighting, feel free to contact me through the Fams and Monsters blog site. I want to again thank Kyle Philson and Cam Hale for joining me this evening. And thanks to each and all of you for watching and chatting. If you made a super chat donation, it is truly appreciated. We thank you. And your support is what makes this possible. Please like it, subscribe, and share. So until next week, stay healthy and have a safe, enjoyable weekend. Good night.